Earlier, we told you about the Premier's call for a national debate on changing building heights here. He also highlighted the need for the Cayman Islands to start considering alternative options to help future-proof the country from economic shocks. Cayman 27's Tammi Sulliman sat down with the Premier to explore his thinking behind this call. Here's what he had to say.
I think many people will now be listening to what you have to say in regards to lifting building height restrictions, perhaps removing them altogether. Your call for national debate on the matter. You do know that this is going to create quite a stir within the community.
Indeed, and I'm happy it does create a stir. I think it is time for us to have that important discussion about the future of Cayman generally, but in particular the future development of the 7 Mile Beach corridor. At this point, I think that the 7 Mile Beach area is somewhere between South Beach, Miami, and Monaco without the yachts. That's where we are in terms of the development, and that's where we are in terms of the kind of visitor and potentially resident that we are attracting. What we're seeing now, and have been actually for the last 10 years, but at increasing pace now, is the redevelopment of condominium complexes which were built in the late 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, when building heights were much less, when the demand for the kind of product was very different. So that first wave of development on the 7 Mile Beach, most of those buildings have been around 40, 50 years. I think we can see the trend when one particular development has not yet broken ground, but has sold penthouses at $24 million. I think that is the clearest indication of the kind of potential resident that Cayman, and particularly the 7 Mile Beach Strip, is now attracting. So I think the big question for us is this. Do we want to simply do what we've done over the course of the last 30, 40 years, review height restrictions from time to time, go to incremental increases in height, and just have a higher line of wall-to-wall concrete and glass along the 7 Mile Beach Strip? Or do we want to take a new look at what is possible and move to taller building heights, further set back, further away from the beach?
So land will be given back then?
Increasing the availability of beach land. They're not making any more of 7 Mile Beach. So the question is, during this redevelopment cycle, what do we want to encourage in terms of that new development? Because if we stay with the status quo, as I said, what we're going to simply wind up is just taller buildings where there are currently buildings, but no additional beach available either to see or to utilize. Whereas if we move if we permit taller buildings, but insist on greater setbacks.
Does that mean east of West Bay Road? Can you clarify on what you mean by increased setbacks?
To allow greater public access to areas of the beach. Because the setback requirements would be significantly more. And I believe in most instances would require that the redeveloped condominium complex, or whatever the case may be, may well have to be situated across what is currently the road. But these are details I think that
yet to be ironed out.
And we're a long ways from that. So, but conceptually, certainly my view is that it is something that Cayman should grasp with both hands.
What was the catalyst for, having the discussion, this debate on how taking away building height restrictions could help diversify the economy? We've talked about diversifying the economy many times. You and I have had the discussion. We have our financial services sector, we have our tourism sector, we have medical tourism that's starting to make a dent. Why now, though, that we're thinking that this could be something that would kickstart a different revenue stream for us?
Without question, we are seeing a different type of visitor and an increasingly affluent visitor and potential resident. This cadre of people know and want greater opportunities for entertainment, for experiences. They want higher quality amenities and facilities. We have to cater to them if that is what we want. The idea of an iconic tower is something that I think will do what it's done in other places. There's the Eiffel Tower, one of the older of these sort of iconic structures in Paris, but more recently there is the Khalifa Burj in Dubai, and the impact that that has had on people's perceptions of the jurisdiction. Over time, these come to actually symbolize the place. I think increasingly across the Caribbean, where all of us are essentially selling sea, sun, and sand, there have to be other things, unique things, which individualize the jurisdiction if we are to compete successfully for that high-end business. We have to decide whether we want more of the same, just a little bit taller than what we currently have, or whether we want to do something that is a real standout, something that no other country in the region is doing. And Cayman is incredibly well placed. I think leaders and governments around the region, if not around the world, would give just about anything in terms of concessions to have a developer like DART that is, A, has the wherewithal, and B, has the wish and desire to invest, what will be $1 billion and a half in the economy over the course of the next 6, 7, 8 years. The world, and by extension Cayman, will be having to deal with a recession. We are ending what is a normal growth cycle in the world economy, and at some point, whether it is next year or the year that follows, there will be a global slowdown. The question is how well we are able to deal with it. I see a massive project like this going a long way to help mitigate the consequences of a slowing of our economy.
What would be the next step for government? You've asked for a national debate. You're calling on people to have this discussion. How long are you waiting for that discussion to be had, and what would be the next step for you?
Well, I think it's early days yet. Plan Cayman is on the way. The next phase of that exercise does involve consideration of the 7 Mile Beach sort of development area. We'll see what comes out of that debate. We'll hear what the public say. And we'll get, I think, more concrete details as to what DART proposes as they themselves.
For the iconic tower?
Yeah. As they themselves, start to give greater consideration and do more research on this project. But the point which I tried to emphasize in the speech, though, is that governments, while DART is the developer that has proposed this, whatever we do in terms of changes to planning regulations and so forth would not just be limited to DART. It would have to be available to any developer who fell within the area, the planned area, and who came up with, or who is prepared to come up with the kind of additional infrastructure support which a project like this would necessarily require. I also spoke about Georgetown and the revitalization of the capital, and during the last term we made some significant changes to planning regulations there to allow multi-use of buildings in Georgetown. It hasn't really sparked any redevelopment yet. I think we have to look again at what else we need to do to get developers, potential developers, interested in Georgetown. I spoke at length about how employment numbers have improved dramatically since we took office. I really worry about another major recession and many Caymanians, again, struggling to keep employment and consequently struggling to keep their homes. It's something that weighed heavily on me during the last term. Even when we actually got economic numbers turning around and government revenues bouncing back, the delay in getting Caymanians back into employment was something that haunted my administration and kept me awake night after night after night. It is inevitable that there is going to be a significant global slowdown. How bad the recession is, I don't think people have been able to assess that yet. Well, but there will definitely be a global slowing over the course, within the next 2 years, without question.
So basically you're saying timing is key, but speaking about wherewithal, there are those who are going to say, does Cayman have the wherewithal to support an iconic tower? Can we actually have the infrastructure in place to not just build but service a tower such as that?
The two things have to go hand in hand. I mean, even from the very first presentation that DART made, we made it very clear that they will have to assist, in financial terms, with ensuring that we have the necessary infrastructure to be able to support the increased traffic and increased population that this is likely to bring. I really believe that this will give the Cayman Islands that edge that we are increasingly having to fight for, and will, as I say, make us more resilient to be able to ride through the inevitable next recession.
And you can view the full interview on our website. That's cayman27.ky.